4 months ago, on April 10, 2025, one of BeamNG's oldest records finally fell. For years, the off-road circuit leaderboard was ruled by Lazaruss with a 42.409 time that many believed was unbeatable. But then came Skrratt. With a unique tune and perfect lines, he shattered the record by over a second. Normally, this sparks a wave of competition, but not this time, because Skrratt wasn't just precise and fast. He was using one of the most controversial setups BeamNG has ever seen, a Jato with an engine on a D series. BeamNG released on Steam Early Access over 10 years ago, and ever since it has been constantly evolving. Each update added new cars and maps, shaping not just the game, but also the strategies players use when speedrunning. For half a decade, the Hirochi Sunburst and SBR4 reigned supreme, dominating nearly every time trial thanks to their speed, acceleration and tuning potential. The off-road circuit was no exception. Set in West Coast, this dirt track features uneven terrain, tight hairpins, bumps and jumps. Only a handful of vehicles in the game can strike the right balance between speed and stability to finish it quickly. One of the earliest records was set in the Sunburst, which had a clear advantage on these curves. Wide tires and sharp handling made the corners look easy, but the track had a trick up its sleeve: 7 jumps. And that's where the Sunburst struggled. Heavy and equipped with a stiff suspension, the car lost huge chunks of speed on every landing, and no amount of tuning could fully solve the problem. Everything changed when the developers introduced a new vehicle, the FCV Vivace, and on May 31st this car was finally used to push the time down, and down, and down. In total, the Vivace managed to cut almost 8 full seconds in its default configuration. But how was that possible? Bluntly put, its weight and suspension were both superior to the Sunburst, yet it still had a big drawback. While the suspension was indeed better, it didn't have enough travel to handle all the bumps scattered across the off-road circuit. This meant losing speed both on the straights and in the turns. At this point, the trial was taken pretty much as is. No skips, no weird vehicle setups, no bugs. Some speedrunners tried experimenting with new configurations, but nothing major or game-breaking came out of it, until a player named Insano decided to push his luck and build the ultimate speedrunning setup, his FCV Vivace. He stripped almost every part that wasn't necessary, shedding nearly 200 kilos. The result, a true monster of a car, lighter, faster and far more agile. The Vivace suddenly dominated on the off-road circuit. Turns became manageable and even most jumps were no problem, except one. Due to loss of weight, Vivace's acceleration became brutally fast, and crashing into the sign on this particular jump became a real risk. There were other downsides too. The stripped down Vivace was easier to damage and struggled with stability and traction. Even so, Insano managed to improve time by 8/10, but mandatory slowdowns before almost every jump took their toll. You either risk crashing or take it slow and careful. There was no other way. By this point, the community was growing fast, and many new players were trying their luck with this and other challenges. The new players were hungry for a skip. But with checkpoints and fences surrounding the off-road circuit, it seemed unlikely. After a lot of testing, speedrunners managed to perform one cut. It was perfect conditions and proof of concept, but one of the most problematic parts, the jump with the sign, was skippable. And on March 1st, 2021, Skrratt pulled off the first big skip on the off-road circuit. On paper it's simple: set up the car straight with a good line into the turn and hit as much raw speed as possible. In reality, it was far from easy. Getting enough speed was a challenge, even with the Vivace's absurd acceleration. The path to the jump was crucial. You needed to stay close to the middle. The edges were littered with dirt bumps, and the fence had a small inward tilt that could ruin everything. and then came landing, the trickiest part for the Vivace. To survive, you had to hit the slope of the second, smaller jump. Otherwise, the car simply couldn't handle the rough impact. Skrratt's setup was impossible to control. It was FCV Vivace with maximum power, with exceptional nitro and with a driver dedicated to getting a world record. With the one goal in mind, he implemented all the strategies he knew. From jump skip to airtime reduction to a precise adjustments on every jump to set the car up perfectly for the next turn. It worked wonders as he managed to set a new world record of 47.126 seconds, saving another 9/10. This run sparked a wave of interest in the community, leading to new Vivace setups and world records. In just a year, time dropped by another full second, with Kimorasa and Hotel HHG driving the next wave of innovations. The question on everyone's mind: how can we clear this track even faster? A new setup emerged, an even lighter Vivace, now without a tailgate. It was a risky trade-off. On one hand, it shaved roughly 40 kilos. On the other hand, it also removed the spoiler, which meant losing downforce, making the jumps much harder. And in Hotel's run, the danger was clear. His wheels barely brushed the sign. One tiny miscalculation and it would have been a restart. But with a bit of luck and a lot of practice, he managed to set an incredible 46.385 and saved nearly 7/10. Kimorasa managed to push the time even further, using the same setup with slightly different tuning. The runner managed to use his vastly superior experience with this vehicle to save speed on the corners and jumps. Controlling a supercharged Vivace isn't exactly easy. The extra power and instant torque make traction much harder to manage, but despite a few mistakes, he pulled it off, setting a brand new record at 46 seconds. Could the run have been cleaner? Absolutely, but in BeamNG there is really no such thing as a perfect run. The physics demand precision, and even tiny mistakes have huge consequences. After Kimorasa's run, the community was forced back to the drawing board. There was nothing, no skips, no new vehicles, and no tricks that could help. The run was simply too good. But almost 6 months later, on November 2nd, 2022, a run was posted that completely destroyed Kimorasa's record by 2.5 seconds. Lazaruss, a brand new runner on the BeamNG scene with prior experience in NASCAR Thunder, uploaded the run. While using normal version of Vivace with a tailgate, he introduced a brand new skip, a second long jump. Lazaruss noticed how much time gets lost on the ramp and the turn that follows. Normally, you have to slow down, otherwise the car slams straight into the fence with obvious consequences. His solution was simple: approach at an angle and land in a precise spot right in the middle of the corner while still clipping the checkpoint. On paper, this strategy shouldn't even be possible. Just like the first skip, it requires massive speed and an almost flawless line. The real nightmare, however, is the landing. The first skip at least relied on the slope to absorb impact, but this one left everything up to BeamNG's damage model. And if that wasn't enough, you also had to be ready to set up for the corner immediately after touching down. Lazaruss's run was a big deal. He didn't just bring a new skip into play, he also came up with a fresh strategy, landing on the side of the track. That trick helped him keep speed, soften landings, and even shave off a bit of airtime. But of course, it wasn't all sunshine. That part of the track is rough. Spend too long bouncing there and your speed just melts away. His run was solid, not perfect, but solid. Even with mistakes, like hitting one jump at nearly a 90-degree angle and taking some less than ideal lines, he still clocked in at 43.381 seconds. Not satisfied, he kept grinding. Attempt after attempt, nearly a month later, he pushed the time down to 42.409, a record that stood for almost 3 whole years. Sure, there was still time to save. He lost some speed at the end, and as it's customary in BeamNG, there is always room for improvement, but the map's difficulty, a bit of RNG, and the arrival of the new Scintilla supercar shifted the community's focus elsewhere. And so that record remained, a reminder of just how wild BeamNG's physics can be. Until on the 10th of April 2025, Skrratt got this run. Skrratt saved 1.1 seconds while completely ignoring one of the skips. His driving was sharp, with barely any technical mistakes except at the very end. But the only reason this was possible was Jato. This little piece of equipment is instant acceleration in bottled form. Why worry about perfect lines and preserving speed when your setup can literally blast you forward on command? Jato has always split the speedrunning community. Some runners love it, experimenting with new, crazier strategies. Others despise it, saying it isn't real driving and refusing to try it. And they have a point. The risk versus reward compared to a normal car is astronomical. On dirt especially, a mistake in a regular vehicle means a restart. With Jato, a single boost can save everything. But it's not flawless. The pure Jato builds suffer from constant fuel management issues. That's why the off-road circuit was deemed impossible. 12 seconds of fuel just wasn't enough to cover the whole track without huge half-map jumps. That's why Skrratt went for a fully overhauled version. Heavier, yes, but sustainable, with an engine and a jet. This version of D-Series was able to hold pace through corners without relying on constant jet blasts. Instead, his strategy was about keeping a stable speed across the whole track. With 15x7 rally wheels and a feather-light frame, his jumps were flawless. But more importantly, there were no nosedive. The jet mounted in the middle of the track bed delivered an instant burst that stabilizes the car mid-air. This led to much smoother landings and a lot of preserved speed, which in turn led to the beautiful record. But the real question is Jato a problem? Technically, not really. In almost a year, about 38% of all time trials have been claimed by Jato-powered D and MD series trucks. On one hand, that's a pretty big slice. On the other, it's still manageable. The real issue is that those 38% are practically untouchable with the regular cars. Still, it's nowhere near the Scintilla, which, when first released, took over nearly 70% of all time trials. Even after Jato, it still holds 46%. Due to limited use outside of short bursts, Jato can't compete with the Scintilla or even the Vivace in longer races. And since it's also one of the oldest physics models in BeamNG, many players believe it will eventually be reworked, maybe even made unusable. But until that day comes, it's simply unbeatable. There is also an issue with the size of the community and the number of challenges. BeamNG speedrunning is packed with different trials, scenarios and campaigns, more than 300 in total, almost half of them are time trials. And splitting Jato and non-Jato runs would create a headache for moderators and artificially inflate the number of challenges. Speedrunning in BeamNG is already difficult due to the skill required in driving and tuning, but separating categories would add an extra layer of complexity to anyone trying to get started. So what do you think? Should Jato have its own category or stay as is? Thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe to support the channel, and I will see you all in the next one.